Chapter 10. Hunter lay on the edge of the small confines of the cage. He moved from side to side like a prisoner in solitary confinement. They had been traveling for days. He slept, urinated, and defecated in that cage. He felt worse than the dogs he had holed up in his kennels. At least they were treated humanely, but this was worse than anything he had ever known. His treatment was cruel and barbaric. His once beautiful white fur was matted with feces, and his leg movements were weakening. They were beginning to shrivel from lack of exercise. The truck came to an abrupt stop. Hunter could barely raise his head. He was weak from lack of water and fresh meat. This was done by Bain to prevent Hunter from resisting once the cage was opened. Hunter was completely demoralized from the ordeal he has been suffering at Bain's hands. Bain hopped out of the truck, walked around, and pulled a metal cart to lift the cage out of the truck and set it on the ground. Hunter spotted black boots making an indentation in the snow, and then the locks from the cage swung open. "Get out." Bain's voice was deep, dry, and challenging. At first Hunter tried to crawl out, but he was too weak. He didn't know how long it had been since he had eaten. He just slept and woke, and days and nights had passed. Bain reached out and threw him some dried fish. "Eat that or starve. I'm not going to give you to Mina's father. I'm going to leave you out here in this wilderness. I had lots of time to think. If you make it out of the wilderness, then you are worthy of being a werewolf, but I doubt you have the pedigree for it. You've been spoiled." Bain laughed and then gave out a growl. "It's not for you to decide whether I'm fit or not to be a werewolf," Hunter said with a weak voice. "I am a werewolf, and I will be an alpha soon." "You have it wrong, yearling. I'm the alpha here. I'm the strongest. You haven't earned the right to be called an alpha. Now crawl out and eat. Stay or die." It wasn't Hunter's nature to give up or give in to someone like Bain, who he thought was a beta. He had the nature of a hunter from his father Wilder, and the stubbornness of his mother. "I will endure, triumph, prevail, and succeed," he thought, but first he had to get healthy. Traveling like an animal had made him feeble and had demoralized him. He had to find some way to overcome his thoughts, the thoughts of never seeing Katie's beautiful face again, never seeing his brothers, mother, and father. Hunter placed one paw in front of him as he struggled to move. He dragged one hind leg after the other, until he had pushed his large body out of the dirty cage which had held him hostage, and weakened his resolve for living. When he lay face down on the snow, his once white fur was stained yellow from lying in his urine. He no longer resembled the proud young werewolf, but looked and felt like an animal caught in a trap, but he wasn't exactly in a trap. He would find a way to get back home to Katie. Placing the fish in his mouth, he ate it with one gulp. When he opened his crusty eyes, he glanced around, but no longer saw the truck or Bain. Before him lay a large open field of snow. The protection of trees looked so far away. They might well have been 1,000,000 miles away, because he couldn't reach them if he wanted, but he had to. He had to find food. Bain had left him only enough to coax him from the cage. Wilder finally reached his limo, and he would be heading home after another failed attempt at securing Hunter. His limo driver waited as he walked to the car door. The driver nodded, and Wilder stepped inside and sat, then the door closed behind him. He vaguely heard when the car started, and the driver headed the limo in the direction of his ranch. His concerns had gotten the best of him. Tension plagued and wore on his body because of the lack of sleep. He couldn't remember when he had been taxed to his limit. When would he get a chance to rest? "Not until my son is safe and Bain is dead," he thought. For the first time he glanced down to see that his hand and some hair on his arm had been singed by the fire from the downed plane. He had been too busy to notice, but traveling home from the airport took 30 minutes. In that time he could have called Adrienne and informed her he was coming home. It wasn't like him to run from anything. If he had called her, he would have to break the news to her that Hunter wouldn't be coming home with him. Staring into the night, he tried to think about everything except his son Hunter, but he kept coming back to him. The car drove to the front entrance, came to a stop, and Wilder exited. He took one step, and then he hesitated to go through the front door. So he walked around to the side of the ranch. He needed more time to think. Glancing out over a vast area of his land he and his brothers owned, the land and ranch would be there for his children and his brothers' children, he thought. There they would make their homes. He would give them their portion of land, and they would live there, and they would all be his family. Looking at the many babies being born, the family would be large, and all thanks to Adrienne. He made a rapid turn. It wasn't because he heard something. He had sharp ears, but he heard nothing. It wasn't because he smelled something. It was because of his instincts and the change of wind that he knew who was standing behind him. "How did you know I would be here?" Bain questioned with a raised eyebrow. His eyes were a menacing yellow color. "Because I knew you would be you. You were like this as a young cub. I didn't expect that you would change. You were never where you said you would be. I should have known that sooner." "I wondered how long it would take you to figure that out," Bain said. "I didn't figure it out. It was just fate." "There is no such thing as fate," Bain said, his mouth tight. "You believe in nothing," Wilder said. "I believe that you will die tonight. Not before I tell you what has become of your son." Wilder's heart fluttered and he was overcome with hurt, but he would not reveal that to Bain. "My son is no longer a pup. He can take care of himself. I took him out to the farthest part of Alaska in a cage, starved him, and then let him out in the wild. About now he's food for wolves or a trophy for some hunter. You will never see him again," Bain said with a smirk. Wilder's eyes glowed deep blue. He closed his eyes and twisted his neck from side to side. When he thought of his son, the pain overwhelmed his body and made him weak. He had to shake it off and think like a werewolf, not a man, or he wouldn't be able to function. "When I have finished with you, I will kill those brothers of yours one at a time. And then I will take Adrienne and their offspring with me, make some of them slaves, and I will have your pack and your woman. I will fuck her and she will have my pups, and you will be forgotten." Bain watched Wilder's face. He hadn't affected him yet. "Do you think I forgot Hunter's brother? He's dead too. I will kill everything you've wanted, and now it's your time." The joy of killing was etched on Bain's face. His chilling dark eyes danced with delight. Wilder, standing patient, said nothing. He peered restlessly at Bain, only his eyes shifting. He raised his head and let out a wolf howl. The dogs took up his cry. It shocked and distracted Bain. In a few seconds, Wilder sprang on Bain, sinking his teeth into him, tearing away a large piece of his flesh, and with the meat of Bain's shoulder in his mouth, Wilder spat it to the ground in front of him. Bain staggered away from Wilder with blood oozing everywhere. The attack was unexpected. Then they both shifted at the same time. Bain had made a mistake to approach Wilder while he was in his human form. It was Bain's blatant arrogance that made him vulnerable. Standing facing each other with their large fur ruffled on their backs, they snarled and gnashed their teeth. Walking in a circle around each other to look for an advantage, Bain discovered that now he was vulnerable. Rushing Bain, Wilder took aim at Bain's shoulder, and when Bain tried to protect it, Wilder went low, and with his sharp teeth, he clamped it to Bain's leg, snapping and breaking it. Bain looked surprised. He never thought Wilder was capable. Yet Bain wouldn't give up. He hobbled on one foot and refused to go down because he knew that it would be all over. This would be the war to end all wars between Bain and Wilder. There could be only one alpha and master. It would be decided in 1 second. Wilder leapt for Bain's jugular, and Bain couldn't protect it. Wilder dug his teeth into it, and Bain fell and staggered in a corner. This hadn't been either werewolf's first fight. They had fought wolves, men, bears. Wilder was cunning and possessed the pride of a hunter, and had learned the patience of the wolf. Bain was brash and a bully like a man, which he refused to admit to. Each had their own weakness, and each had their own strength. Bain had forced Wilder into a corner, and gave him no way out when he chose to brag about killing his sons and fucking Adrienne. Wilder sprang again on Bain, tearing a deeper piece of shoulder where his bone showed. Wilder would take him apart piece by piece as Bain watched himself unable to move or do anything to protect himself. Bain looked down to see blood trickling in large quantities over his fur. He hadn't seen Wilder spring at him. Wilder gave no indication that he would. His face showed no expression where Bain was concerned. With such a surprise move, Bain couldn't protect his jugular. "What are you doing out here, Wilder, and who is with you?" Wilder turned to see Adrienne standing behind him. When he did, Bain made one last dying leap on Wilder's back, taking him to the ground. They were entangled together, snarling and biting furiously. Adrienne at first stood stunned at the sight of blood everywhere. "Leave, Adrienne," Wilder shouted. Surprised at seeing Adrienne, he couldn't protect himself from Bain's assault. Bain slashed Wilder's throat in a violent frenzy of seeing and hearing Adrienne. Adrienne turned screaming and ran into the house. Wilder twisted his body, biting at Bain when he thought Adrienne was safe. He sprang to his feet and Bain charged a bleeding Wilder, going for his throat, and Wilder, fighting off a dying Bain in a violent circle, trying to remain on his feet. Once Wilder stayed steady on his feet, he sprang on Bain, aiming for his jugular, and broke Bain's neck with a jerk. Wilder dug his teeth into it, and Bain fell lifeless. Rushing to Wilder, "Are you all right, my love?" Adrienne held a gun firmly in her hand. "What were you going to do with that?" Wilder said, breathless, taking the gun from her hand. He had to pry it out. "I was going to kill Bain." "Do you even know how to use that?" "I took a few lessons." "Where did you get it?" "We don't have guns in the house." "No, but Robert does. Mina told me where to find it. Drayton is under medication, and Robert was sleeping from exhaustion. He didn't hear anything. Mina and I tried to wake him, and he wouldn't budge." Wilder looked at her. He too was exhausted. He took a hard breath. "I have to call someone from town to pick up Bain and bring him back to his pack." "What are you going to do with him?" "We can't leave him here. His pack will bury him. I'll wake Robert and we'll bring him into the hospital." "Where Lysel is sleeping." "He won't mind." Wilder wrapped his arms around Adrienne and they walked into the house. "We have to talk. I have to know now. I don't like to wait. Besides, I won't be able to sleep." He took her hands, and when they were headed up the stairs, the door opened. "What's going on here?" They turned, and Devon was walking into the house. Wilder ran to Devon and hugged him. "This is a first, Father," Devon said, stepping back and looking intently at Wilder. "What did I miss? I hope it wasn't something exciting. You're bleeding everywhere." "It's nothing." "Where have you been, Devon?" Wilder said, relief washing over him. "I've been to the movies with Katie. She's leaving soon and I want to see as much of her as I can. She's Hunter's girl." "Where is Hunter anyway?" Adrienne said, looking at Wilder. Chapter 11. Hunter crawled along the half-frozen, unforgiving ice until the sun wasn't in sight. He crawled until he saw a river. If he could just get enough fish to eat, he could hunt later. Dragging his hind legs over the snow and boulders, he finally came to rest, leaning over the bank of rushing river water. There he saw a small school of fish. Reaching in with a quick flash of his paws, he had managed to ensnare 2 large king salmons with his razor-sharp teeth. He would stay there all day and fish and eat and drink the fresh water, but it was getting dark and he needed shelter. Not having any clothes, he couldn't endure the spring chill. He thought it best to remain in his wolf form. Hunter tried standing on all fours. Although weak at first, he managed to stand and then walk. He would run next, but still he needed more time. Turning, he came eye to eye with a dark-haired woman and her child. The child stood there, amazed at seeing the largest wolf of his life. It became apparent he had never seen a white wolf this far north. "What is it?" the dark-haired, dark-eyed child of around 12 asked of his mother. "It looks like a wolf. Don't run. He's alone and he's not hungry," the woman said. Hunter wasn't afraid of the woman and child. Had it been a man, then that would have been another story. The woman was holding her catch in her hand, and she took one off the hook and threw it at Hunter. He sprang into the air, catching it in his powerful jaws. Looking around to see if there were more humans, he sat and ate. When he didn't see any, he lay his head on his paws. He knows who is master. He's not a hunter. He's not wild, he's not a dog, the boy said. What is he? He's between a wolf and a dog, but much more, the woman said, looking curiously at him and suspecting she knew what he really is. Can we take him back to the village? The young boy asked his mother. No. It's better that we don't. She reached for the boy's hand and backed away from Hunter, but Hunter wanted to go with him, but he didn't trust them to ask. In his condition, he was as much afraid of them as they might have been of him, so he kept quiet, but he followed their footsteps to their village. The boy looked back. He's following us. That's because we fed him. He's so big we can't feed him anymore. He would eat all the deer around here, and they are scarce enough this time of year. We could starve keeping him around, the older woman said. We can't risk anyone knowing that he's following us. We could be banished. Hunter heard her. He might have been weak, but feebleness didn't affect his hearing. He could hear a bat fly 20 miles away. What if I fished and gave him my portion? No. We can't take the chance. Look at him. He's a meat eater. He couldn't survive on just fish. He would need much more meat than the few ducks that you find. The boy looked back, watching at Hunter, who appeared to be walking faster and stronger than before. Hunter could feel his strength coming back. All he needed was fresh air, food, and exercise. When the woman and boy reached their village, Hunter glanced around. He saw people milling around, some dogs, and a wolf in a pen. He never wanted to be caged again, so he stopped just short of the encampment. The boy looked back and saw Hunter turn around. Hunter had to find shelter. He remembered how warm he had felt before all of this. He dug a place in the snow near a tree and lay down inside. The next morning he woke cold and more hungry than before. He struck out to find some food, anything that could sustain him, until he could build up his resistance and strength. He decided that he would stay around the Eskimo village. There he could get something to wear. He first thought about stealing it, but he didn't want to do that. He couldn't ask, because that would involve a new set of troubles. Trudging through the trees, he saw a fox. He had caught one before when he was a cub, but it had given him so much trouble, and it was a fierce fighter, that he didn't want to risk getting hurt for such a small payoff. Hunter needed a large animal that would sustain him on his trek home. The pain in his stomach was worse than the risk of losing an eye to the fox, so he set out after it. He knew it was no match for him. When the fox who was looking for his morning meal spotted Hunter, he took off running, and Hunter trailed behind him. The fox dashed into an open area. It was clear that the fox was heading for the dense forest ahead of them, but then he heard a hum from an airplane. When he stopped and looked up, he saw the fox scamper for the safety of the woods. Hunter had forgotten that he was a wolf, and not in his human form. He raised his head, as if he wanted to say something to the low-flying plane. He didn't have the experience of his father. He had heard about men flying in planes hunting wolves. He couldn't shout and tell them that he wasn't a wolf, because clearly he was that now. The plane flew low, and then he heard the firing of a shot and a voice say, "Run him! I think he's hit." I don't want to waste another bullet on that beautiful white pelt. When he drops, then I'll finish him off with a club. Hunter didn't feel the bullet just yet, but he knew that something was happening to him, so he ran. No more bullets came, but the plane stopped, and he heard footsteps rushing behind him. It was instinct and the will to live that kept him running and running, even when he knew he should have dropped. Hunter found himself back at the Eskimo village and at the shelter occupied by the young boy and woman. He lay and whimpered outside of their door. The boy didn't say a word. He crept outside when he heard the sound and saw Hunter lying there bleeding in the snow. Rushing to get him water and to clean the wound from his now pink fur, he cried out to his mother, "The great white wolf needs help." The woman rushed out and stood over Hunter. "We can't do anything for him. But I've seen you take bullets out before. Help him. And have him turn on us?" the dark Eskimo said to her son. "I won't turn on you," Hunter said with a cough of breath before he fell into unconsciousness.